Yeah, Angie would love to fish out there.
Well, we gotta hook up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Linda.
That's okay. So I'd like to introduce our speaker for this morning, Kevin Braswell. Kevin is the CEO of Smart Solutions. Smart Solutions is an approved Medicaid assisted technology service provider for the ID, LAH, and CWP home and community-based services waivers. Smart Solutions works with individuals with physical and developmental disabilities, providing technology solutions, promoting independence, and foster a sense of pride and dignity for the folks they serve. Kevin will share some information about Smart Solutions and what they have been able to do to empower individuals and families. He will also talk about resources for funding assistive technologies in Alabama, as well as a new training platform they have launched to bridge the information gaps pertaining to assistive technology in Alabama. So very happy to introduce Kevin and excited to see some of the things that he has to share.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I put it in the chat box. Please bear with me. I've got my son is just in one of those moods this morning, and so if you hear him around
saying hello,
please bear with me. He's being a curmudgeon, and that's the nice word. Again, thanks for having me. I'm going to try to share my screen here, if that's okay. Let's see. There. Did that work?
It did work, yes.
Okay. There we go. We get everything ready. Okay. I'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is this is Kevin Braswell, CEO of Smart Solutions, and we're an assistive technology provider, and we can provide services for the ID, LAH, and CWP waivers. And today, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, why we do what we do, some of the problems that we've seen that we would like to address with technology, our solutions of what we propose to address those problems, and we'll touch on some funding options that we've come across, as well as some takeaways that might be helpful for you. And then I'll just open it up for questions after that. When I give these presentations, I like to keep them as interactive as I can. So, feel free to stop me if you have a question and you just want to ask and handle it at that time. By all means, feel free to do that. Also, I was taking a look at who was on the call. A lot of you have heard at least portions of these presentations, or we've worked together on different projects. And so just bear with me because you might have heard some of these some of these discussion points, or heard my backstory at some point in time. So is there anything else that we might want to cover today that may not necessarily be on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and get started. First, want to talk a little bit about the biggest question that I always get is, okay, so how did you get into this? Why do you do what you do? And so I like to share a little bit and of kind of my backstory. And I do that in terms of a case study, which is what you see on this slide. Back in 1982, I was 10 at the time, and I had a cerebral hemorrhage as a result of a vascular issue. I went through a temporary paralysis with physical therapy, occupational therapy. It happened over a summer, so I didn't miss school and was able to stay in my normal, I guess, academic progression, if that makes sense. I didn't have to miss a year in school. But I remember, I grew up in Mobile where it's very hot, and, I kind of date myself here, but that was back in the days of, you didn't even have remote controls for televisions. You actually had the dial that you had to turn. I remember going through the, that recovery process and always having to ask my mom to do different things for me around the house, whether that was adjust the thermostat or change the channel on the TV. And I do remember vividly that feeling of being helpless, so to speak, and very dependent on mom to do different things for me. And I contrast that with back in 2009, the same thing happened to me. It was a repeat of what happened at 10 years old. And, again, led to a phase of temporary paralysis. I did not have to go through physical therapy and occupational therapy, but it was a 1 month, I guess, physical recovery side. But I was in the home technology line of work before, where we were doing, a lot of home automation solutions and home theaters for large residential installations. And, over that next, several months of recovery, I decided to pivot Smart Solutions and work with individuals with physical disabilities. So I had this technology in my house, and it really did provide me, a sense of independence, albeit a small window of recovery. I was able to be more independent, no reliance on my wife, who was able to continue working from home. But, again, had that sense of independence. So there's a big degree of contrast. And that's why I really, that's why I had that, in essence, one of those light bulb moments that, can we serve a greater good here and repurpose, existing technologies and serve individuals with physical disabilities. And so from that point on, in 2009, it was really 2010, I shifted gears and have been serving our population since 2010. All that being said, for me, it's personal. I really love what I do. I love empowering people with technology. I think that, if we can, as a society, if we can think outside the box with technology, we can really transform the quality of life for individuals with physical and or developmental disabilities. So that's a little bit of background. That's almost always the first question I get asked is how'd you get into this? Why do you do what you do? And that's important for me to kind of share my experiences and again, why I do what I do at Smart Solutions. A little bit of backstory there. So, and so the broad term is assistive technology. I stole this information from ATIA, but it's really any piece of equipment, and that can be anything that is software, hardware related, any type of product or system that contributes to functional independence. And, that's increasing independence and reducing, providing peace of mind solutions for families. And I always think of things as in domains. So, assistive technology is a broad term and can encompass a lot of different domains. And that's the way I kind of like to subdivide assistive technology. And so when we talk about domains, these are assistive technologies that can help. Now, this is not an end all be all list, but you can low vision, communications, mobility, developmental disabilities. So there's a host of different domains that assistive technology is often broken out into. And that being said, we typically are involved in two of those domains, mobility and assisting individuals with physical disabilities. And this is more of the home automation components that we talked about a minute ago. But we've also, in the last couple of years, started working with individuals with developmental disabilities. And we'll talk a little bit more later on the ways that we do that. One second. Hey, girls, y'all keep it down. Sorry, that's my daughter now. Technology types, we talked about a little bit that those are, we can break that down into hardware. These are specific types of items that we get into, such as mounting systems and positioning devices. Hardware can be a specialty switch, an eye tracking device, an adaptive keyboard or mouse, anything that can provide easier access to a computer or speech generation device. Adaptive aids, a lot of times we work with occupational therapists to participate in that evaluation process. If there's a need for adaptive devices to help with bathing and dressing, eating, transferring, those types of things, we let the occupational therapist typically take the lead there, but we can help with with that collaboration and even the procurement and installation and training for those adaptive devices. And then our primary focus to start with was environmental controls, is the term that people often refer to, and that's controlling all aspects of your home, whether that's lighting, TV, thermostat, opening doors, things of that nature. And on a side note, we were funded a couple of years back by the federal VA to further develop our environmental control system and gives us our own platform now, rather than using an off-the-shelf product that we've repurposed. We were able to design, with help of the VA funds, our own solution, and we'll talk about that in a little bit in a second. PERS, we also do these types of systems, and PERS stands for Personal Emergency Response System. Those are the fall pendants and the Ola fallen and I can't get up type technology that provides monitoring, typically on the back end, to help with families with different alerts that can be programmed. The two main challenges that we typically are looking to help with, the first one is smart home technology. This is the use of home automation technology to serve individuals with physical disabilities. The problem that we saw in our work, excuse me one second. Hey, girls. Sorry. The problem that we saw, and the VA also saw as well, and that's why they funded us to develop our solution, is that off-the-shelf products. So things that you could go into Best Buy and that were things on the shelf. And those consumer electronics are a lot of the time, I would say most of the time, not designed for individuals with physical disabilities. The screens aren't the apps, so to speak, aren't designed for accessibility. There's oftentimes ways to interact with the systems that aren't very friendly to the population that we serve. And examples of that are, design elements within the apps that require scrolling and swipe gestures that are oftentimes not easily that individuals that have lost or don't have a high degree of fine motor skills. It's oftentimes very tough for our consumers that in controlling those types of apps. In addition, while you may have an app that's can provide some benefit, or I just say as an example, a Nest thermostat that can help you control your climate in the house. While that may be a decent solution for some individuals, if you have multiple apps on your device, then that is very tough to toggle between the different devices. And there's a high degree of what we call time and motion, which simply means that, it requires a lot of clicks, a lot of navigating between apps, and it's very time intensive, especially for the folks that we serve. So that was the core problem with off-the-shelf products. And there are Amazon Echo or Alexa and Google Home and some of the digital assistants that are personal assistants that are out there. They have some capabilities, but those are typically not available on all platforms and don't support every access method that's out there. And I'll give you an example that there may be an AAC consumer that uses a speech device, and oftentimes, I would say most, if not all the time, our AAC users do not have a robust home automation solution. Typically those are Windows-based devices, and the Nest thermostats of the world typically don't serve the Windows device population, if that makes sense. And so oftentimes our Windows-based AAC users, there's really not a good option for them. In addition to all access methods, which is, your switch users that use switches to navigate control over a device, as well as eye tracking users, it's very tough to hit smaller targets. And so, our consumer electronics really don't support, all the platforms that are out there, as well as all access methods. And, even if you found a good or a solution that worked in your case, that finding a service provider, especially for the home and community-based waivers, is next to impossible. There's really not, in my mind, there's really not anyone out there that provides that specialty, or that can bring that specialty knowledge to bear when it comes in terms of mounting and training for the families and consumers that we serve. So those are the three things that we really look at it and try to help with the smart home technology. And these are just examples here of what we just talked about. You can see the example on the left. It's hard to for someone that has difficulty with their fine motor skills, the scrolling and the swipe gestures on here, smaller buttons just make it really tough to navigate the app, in addition to navigating multiple apps. You can see how this would be very cumbersome to I guess enter the Nest app, control what you needed to control, back out of that and toggle over to the lighting app and turn it on and off the lights. And so it's very cumbersome to toggle between, the multiple apps. And then the last example is our Windows users, which again are AAC devices typically, and there really aren't any options that are out there. And so when we first started out in Smart Solutions, we used it was a custom installation product. It's not something that you could necessarily go into to Best Buy and purchase, but it was a third-party solution that we were able to customize to some extent, but we weren't able to serve the entire population that we were looking to serve. But it did allow us to create some better outcomes, again, with that product. However, I had mentioned earlier that the VA seeded us to build our own system. They also saw a problem where service members have benefits that cover the cost of assistive technology, but they were being, I like to use the word prescribed technologies. They were going home, setting up the devices, and maybe the veteran could only use, just say 60% of the app functionality, again, because of the trouble with navigating, scrolling, and swipe gestures. So a lot of times that leads to abandonment, and what might work for some to some extent for that individual, that oftentimes they became frustrated, and it ended up sitting on a shelf and providing no benefit for the service member. So the VA also, again, saw that as an issue, and that's where we partnered with Auburn and were awarded a federal VA grant to build our solution, which is what we call Simply Smart. And so Simply Smart at the highest level it's a cross-platform, so it does work on your mobile devices, with whether it's an Apple or Android device, as well as Windows. So again, that was a must-have for us, is that we truly had a cross-platform way to allow our users, regardless of the types of devices that they had, with some type of solution. In addition to, it had to be a multi-access method type of system. So a cross-platform multi-access method. So, working with our switch user population and eye tracking population to provide alternative access methods for controlling your home. And when we talk about controlling your home, there's a couple of different ways we like to look at things. One is active control, which is pretty straightforward. That's giving our consumers the ability to control the different things around their house, whether that's climate, lights, or door locks, or door openers, and they can typically have what we call active control. And one of the other factors that I really don't have in the slide here is that we view home technology, and a must-have is really participation in designing it so that everyone can use. A lot of times we see proprietary devices that are not very well, I should say they aren't accessible for family members. And I'll give you an example. So you may have a Tobii Dynabox device, which is pictured here, which is an AAC device that has a it's a very crude environmental control system that's built in. but that's really specific to the individual with the device. And to me, that's further isolating. If only, the only user, so to speak, for environmental controls is the AAC users. So that's further, in my mind, isolating by only having a home automation or environmental control system that the AAC user is the only one that can use it. And so we felt it was very important that everyone have access to that technology, whether it's a family member or sibling, that it's more of a a broader home automation or home controls platform that everyone can use. We also like to think of, with home technology as passive monitoring. And this is really more for family members that if they have to leave home for a few minutes, that there are different tools in place that can help them have greater peace of mind, whether that's monitoring, whether or not a door is opened with a door sensor or a motion sensor or a cameras, so that maybe they have their mobile device with them, with the software loaded on their mobile device, that they get alerts. They can tell whether, they can view the activity of what's happening at home, whether motion has been detected or doors opened. And again, that gives them a greater peace of mind that the individual that they provide care for is well. So again, it's active control and passive monitoring is how we kind of think of things for home controls. It's relatively new for us, and I would say by new, I mean in the last couple of years. We saw a need where our consumers with developmental disabilities needed more than home controls or home automation, that it's really assisting our users with the developmental disabilities with more daily living and life skills than home controls. And so we added to our our offerings technology solutions to help individuals increase independence.
Hey, I got my hand up too.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
see if I
can't
can
see your
help
hand
you.
up.
Oh, sorry. I'm
No
sorry,
problem.
Kevin. Eddie can't see it. I forgot I took myself off mute to tell you.
Okay. She can't see the presentation, is that?
Yeah, she can see it, but she can't hear it. And I was telling her to put her closed captioning on so she could at least can read it until the host and stuff can help her. But I was going to try to see if I could. I forgot. I'm sorry, y'all. I forgot that I was off mute.
Oh, that's okay. And thanks for stopping me. I should also mention that I can't see the chat bar right now, and so or the chat room.
Oh, that's not good. Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I can see you and hear you though. So I don't know that it's something that you're doing that.
Okay.
I think it's somebody on their end.
Okay. That was probably sounded like Sonia's. Thanks for stopping me to let me know. Because again, I can't see that chat right now while I'm talking. Any other questions, or did I before
No, that's
I
it.
move on? Okay. And so with to better serve with these needs, we started a program called Simply Living. And Simply Living is using consumer electronics. So these may be things that you can go into Best Buy and purchase, or that are readily available, but customizing those technologies to help with help individuals better monitor health and wellness, hygiene. There's scheduling and time management that often we have our consumers that need help with, and a host of things that consumer electronics can help with, but it really ties back into thinking outside the box on this. It's, a lot of people may not necessarily think of a typical, a consumer electronics item that can help our population. But it really can, if we customize and think through, again, thinking outside the box, we can provide a lot of benefit using those technologies. So it's thinking through, I always like to use the term, it's not really necessarily what a device, what something was designed to do, it's what it can do. And that's what we need to capitalize on is not necessarily what a device was originally intended for, but what can it do to provide benefits for the population we serve. And that's in addition to, wellness monitoring, things like different supports that can help families with peace of mind. And a lot of times that's wellness monitoring, fall detection, activity monitoring, being able to see cameras within the house, all of the tools, that families can use to provide to give them greater peace of mind. I think it's, technology is great, and you can show someone the benefits of assistive technology. I think that's great. And, educating folks on what's out there, but what's really important as well is, while a technology, if it's great, if there aren't any funding options, then if something's not attainable, then it's in essence pointless. So what's key is not only letting folks know what technologies are out there, but we have to provide them a pathway to obtain these technologies. And again, that's really important. And a lot of you, I know, are, just because I know who you are and I've met you before, I'm very familiar with the home and community-based waivers. And just for folks that aren't aware, those are, again, home and community-based waivers administered by Medicaid, and based on the population, based on the consumer, a different waiver may apply. And a lot of folks that are on the call, that may be the IDD waiver or CWP, which those are administered by the Department of Mental Health. Just to share some information, we had a report pulled in fiscal year, I believe it was 2019, that the utilization of assistive technology for the ID and LEH waiver population, to give you a little perspective, I can't remember what the latest number of slots is. Someone on the call may know how many slots there are for ID and LEH, but the consumers that are, if they were eligible on the waiver and eligible for assistive technology, they had available to them $5,000 per year with no lifetime cap. Fiscal year 2019, the total state expenditures for the assistive technology provision, which is Medicaid code T2029, across the number of individuals on the ID and LEH waiver was less than $5,000 total across the state. So you can see that this benefit is extremely underutilized for individuals that are on the ID and LEH waivers. In working with, just starting our work with the Department of Mental Health waivers, and specifically the ID and LEH waivers, what we saw is a fundamental disconnect, really, with the support coordinators and families and consumers. So really the problem was that, you know, a lot of technology changes so often, and we've come so far with technology, especially since the ID and LEH waivers were created, that technology's evolved where it can provide some benefit for our population. It's just that, in my mind, some support coordinators, at least, have not embraced technology and as a way that can improve outcomes for individuals with developmental disabilities. So you have on one side the maybe the support coordinators are not necessarily familiar with that provision, but also families were not aware a lot of times what technology benefits were available to them. And so, I mean, you can kind of see the divide there of, in essence, we had families not knowing what to ask for, and we have support, you know, a lot of times we have support coordinators that don't know what to prescribe. And so, you know, again, that leads to the underutilization of that provision. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to address, is that information gap. But, you know, one of the things I would like to stress is, you know, as we try to address that informational gap as a provider, you know, I view it as, you know, while it's great to provide the information, and we have other, you know, there are other groups that, well, one in particular that I won't get into, that does provide information on, you know, assistive technologies and what they can do, but there aren't any, they don't necessarily inform folks that these are the pathways to obtain these technologies, but even more importantly, working with families to get the technologies to the families and beneficiaries to realize the benefits that the technology can provide. So I think that's what differentiates what we're doing, is that, you know, while it's great to educate, unless you can get a device funded and into the consumers, you know, to the consumer, then, you know, while there is some value in providing that education, it doesn't have the impact until you can get it into use by family and beneficiary. You know, there are other waivers that are out there, you know, and you guys are probably familiar with the sale waiver and act waiver, and I have links to all three of these, but we are also a CWP provider, and we're looking forward to CWP and how we can maybe use assistive technology to help our consumers and families on the new CWP waiver. So we're excited about that, and that's just getting started for us. Oh, go ahead. Was that question, somebody? Okay. Would also like to do, in case that information, if someone comes across this presentation, I do like to include the Medicaid waiver codes for the different waivers that are out there, so that if folks are talking to families, are talking to support coordinators, that they can reference the Medicaid code that actually funds that service, and, you know, the different amounts that are associated with this. I do want to state for the record, so that because I actually did get in trouble for this, I didn't put the disclaimer here. So I have to say that, you know, the service codes and benefit amounts, those are always subject to change, and the administering agency, they're the ones that decide whether or not an individual is eligible for that assistive technology benefit. So I have to always say that these are the caps that I'm aware of and that I pulled before, but those may have changed, as well as the, you know, as well as the qualifications for an individual. So just wanted to go on record there. It's not really applicable to our group here today, but the VA does have provisions available for their service members with disabilities. Again, this is an underutilized service as well. And there's also the alternative finance program, which is administered by the ADRS, and the links are here, but that's meant to provide a more favorable interest rate and longer term. And the alternative finance program administered by the Southern Disability Foundation, they're more in tune with funding assistive technology, whereas a traditional bank, if you went in and asked for a loan for assistive technology, they might not necessarily be open to funding that type of loan, just because they're not necessarily familiar with assistive technology. So if there are key takeaways from today, I would say that first of all is the education that we are doing. We started a few months back with trying to bridge the information gap, and so here's a link to our training site. And what we try to do is every month set aside some time to provide training on different topics. And again, we host these trainings all the time. We may only get one participant, but in my mind, if we only have one participant, that's just one more person that is empowered, with the knowledge that they need to engage their case manager or support coordinator. And these are our examples of the types of topics that we cover. But if someone has a topic they want to see us cover, feel free to send me an email. And if I'm not necessarily the expert on that, we have a lot of people that we can bring in to present on that topic. And so we're always open to creating new content to make this as the best training platform we can for our families and for our consumers. We do in services. So, groups like today, just send us an email. We'll be glad to participate in any policy group. I guess any type of gathering that will hear us speak. We're more than welcome to participate. And, our services, we do have one-on-one assistance where we work with families and consumers to do one-on-one assistance, really. And it's technology planning. We do everything from, we'll help research funding. We do assistive technology assessments. We can recommend products, all the way through to procurement and installation, as well as support for the assistive technologies. And we've really we really do advocate for our consumers. And so we spend a good bit of, or I should say, I spend a good bit of my time with advocacy and love promoting how technology can transform lives and improve outcomes. So we do spend a good bit of time with that as well. I mentioned a little bit about, the key is we're not here to just share information. We're not here to, or we don't exist just to share information. We like to get these technologies into the hands of our consumers and families to really make a difference.
You've got a couple questions.
Okay.
Jasmine, do you want to go first?
Yes, I will. And I've been emailing with you as well, Mr. Braswell.
Yes, hey, Jasmine.
Ability Alliance. You're going to be speaking with our agency in a couple of weeks, Ability Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got a question about, so some of the barriers, even for our case or support coordinators and families that know about assistive technology, is sometimes, a lot of times our regional offices will want a prescription, and then they'll want an order from maybe a physical therapist or a speech therapist. And for our adult population, there's not a provider of that through Medicaid or even waivers. We've got families actually trying to set up their own speech therapist as a waiver provider. So
Mhm.
those are additional barriers to getting some of this assistive technology for the people who really do know kind of more about it. And so did you
Oh,
have,
yes,
you have any
absolutely.
suggestions
We've
for that,
definitely
or like,
seen that. Mhm.
sorry, like
No, go ahead.
partnering with providers that can help us make that process smoother for families where we don't, we send in a request for assistive technology, we get not enough information or
Mhm.
not enough supporting documentation, need
Mhm.
physical therapy order or need prescription from a,
Mhm.
so, and it's when we have to go back to the families, and we don't have those in our communities generally for adults that only receive Medicaid and the
Yeah.
Medicaid waiver.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that's what we've seen over here in Region 5 is that, first of all, that the process even at the regional office, um, uh, we were getting depending on the support coordinator agency, we had one support coordinator that understood that, I mean, they were getting feedback from the regional office about how the process should work for assistive technology. And we may have another agency that was getting feedback from the same regional office, and it was a different process and different way to go about, helping families and consumers reach that benefit. And so it reached a point with me that I was like, okay, well, we just need to set a meeting with Region 5. And as a result of that meeting, let's come up with a common understanding and I won't say approved process, but their understanding of the process, so that we didn't at least have any barriers to the actual process itself. Now, once we had the process ironed out, to your point, there were issues along the way. We've seen cases where, our first couple of individuals that came through, a generic prescription was all that was needed, where a physician could say, this individual is under my care, and we recommend assistive technology. So that's all it took to begin with, was just a very generic, I should say broad, prescription for assistive technology by the physician. But it recently came up within the past few months that now, according to Region 5, that really wasn't going to work. And so I took it upon myself to look at other states, that what is required in other states, what are some examples and best practices that they were following, and help pull together a template which is a little bit more in depth, and was able to provide a little bit more, I guess, details for what it might be a best case scenario for prescriptions. And that being said, we were still having issues. So I do see your point. My goal is to, in theory, the way I think it should work is that if you have a somewhat detailed prescription with a support coordinator that's documenting the need, aligned with an assistive technology that addresses those goals, that if you have different, I should say, lenses looking at this, recommending assistive technologies that are all in agreement, if you have that consistency from the prescription all the way through the AT assessment and even through to the proposal, that this is the equipment that would be recommended, that in turn supports the AT assessment or maps back to the AT assessment, which ultimately maps back to the prescription and stated goals from the families and support coordinators, then that should be, in theory, what's needed to support the adding to assistive technology to the plan of care. Now, we've recently seen that going through all of those recommendations, so that we've had our prescription aligning with the support coordinators, families documentation of their meeting, aligned with an AT assessment all the way through the proposal, that now we've seen request not funded or turned down by the regional office. And that's what we're taking a look at next, is trying to understand, how how a prescription aligned with the stated goals from the family and support coordinator meeting with an AT assessment and proposal that are all in alignment, are that it's turned down at the regional office, by someone that may or may not have met the consumer. So that's what we're going through now, is trying to better understand, what may be happening in the process. Even if it makes it all the way through and is funded, Jasmine, to your point, even if you go all the way through and something is funded, then there's a lack of providers on the back end.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
and so there isn't really a plan, to my knowledge, of adding more providers specifically to the ID and LAH waivers. So, if you can address if you can address the documentation concerns, have everyone speaking the same tune, even if it's funded, that lack of providers is yet another barrier.
Kevin, I think you got a couple more questions too.
Sure.
But go ahead, Jasmine.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick? I know.
Not at all.
Kim, you had your hand raised first.
Yeah.
But go ahead, and then I'll go after Kim. But I have two really, really important updates, but go ahead, because you're exactly right. We can do all this, what he just talked about, but if they're not providers, which I can tell you there are not, we're in big trouble. But anyway, go ahead.
No,
Okay.
I think you're.
Yeah, Kim had a question, Kevin.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so hey, I'm Kim Spangler. I work with ARC of Central Alabama. I'm the community experience coordinator there. So we're working with a lot of people on the HCBS waivers. My question was, do we have a read, or does anybody on this call know the breakdown in percentages, so to speak, of within the ID or END, whatever the waiver is, which people are the percentage of people that are have residential care through a provider like ARC in a group home setting? And if we do know that, is there a big ask going on for the assistive technology that's not being granted? That's the first question. And then the second part of my question speaks to the participation issue you spoke about, because the last thing we want to do is use technology to try to help somebody that ends up further isolating them. And so, just through my own personal lived experience, what I remember with my own son as being a barrier or problematic was getting this great technology, trying to use it throughout his younger years through school, and through the process of changing team members or teachers from one year to the next, whoever it was, the technology would change and or the people would change, and there was this constant retraining on our end of how to use the technology. And by the time within the school year they had figured out how to use it, the school year was well more than halfway over, and we had wasted so much time in the constant training cycle that there wasn't a lot of progress getting done. And so I'm just wondering if you have any kind of data that you could produce as going forward as it's being used in schools on like more of a universal design level, to start with the younger generations of, let's just
all get trained the same way, the same time on the same things going forward. Is that too big of a question? Sorry. That's it.
Oh, I'm just trying to think so moving forward, gathering more information or even having a focus on engaging the school systems on assistive technology so that, whether it's, the schools or the individuals at a younger age and as well as their families being trained on assistive technology options. Is that?
Yeah, the schools, within the colleges, the universities that are doing the certifications and the degrees in collaborative ed, all of the above. Yeah.
That's great that you mentioned that, because we do have a relationship with UAB that has expanded in the last couple of months. We actually met with them yesterday about getting their occupational therapists more involved, because we see that as a gap, that there's not a lot of providers on the occupational therapy side. And so that we feel like that we can bring, their PhD level students, into the mix here to maybe fill a provider need there, as well as providing training for the occupational therapist on assistive technologies and, how they can be used, for the consumers we serve. And so with our online training tool, we've seen, I think we had 25 UAB students the other day on one of our classes. And so they are really starting to participate in some of those monthly sessions that we have, which is great. And we do in services for Alabama State. We have done those, as well as UAB as another.
So can I just add what it boils down to, I think personally, and I think this will relate to most of the families on here, is the gearing down what it has to be is more self-direction, and you have to be able to offer training and support to your direct support people that are supporting your person. They need the training. So what they're doing in other states, and what I have been advocating for our DMH to do is what they're doing in other states is offering training and paying for companies contracting for good, because the capacity is just too large for just Kevin to do it. But to have, if that family wants to access that training, it's all on a portal. You go on a portal, you access this, you request assistance. They have that company contact you. They said they have a network of people that can either assist that support person at home and training them, and then have a way to have ongoing access to a technical assistance center so that a support person can call and get virtual support or get, some type of support. Because again, you can have all these wonderful pieces of equipment and hardware and systems, but it boils down to the caregiver and the support person and the family being supported to continue to utilize and train ongoing staff that changes out, family situations change. It needs to be sustainable, and they've got to figure out a system that is sustainable, that families can access, that's plain language and easily navigatable.
Okay. Thanks. Any other questions? I know that I see the chat box that you have your next speaker coming in. If you have any questions, here's my contact information. Feel free to touch base, and if I can answer any questions, I will, but I can point you to someone that can if I can't answer your questions. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. It was very informative.
Thank you.
Sure. You guys have a great weekend.
Thank you.
So Dr. Debbie, did you see, I asked you a question in the chat about your fishing. What kind do you like to do? I can't hear. Now, do this move over.
Oh, I said I like crappie, brims, but I'm not too crazy about catfish.
Okay. Do you ever do DC fishing?
I've gone one time and
Okay.
I didn't catch a whole lot, and
Oh.
so I won't be back there.
No.
But it
husband
was
used to love
fun watching
Mhm.
people get seasick. I mean, it was just an
Oh,
interesting
yeah.
thing to see. I didn't think it was real until I saw a lot of people experience
Oh. Oh.
Yes, they'll actually turn green.
it. Yeah.
Mhm. My husband used to go deep sea fishing all the time with his and his friends, and he was in the Navy, so he didn't have any problems with seasickness. But yeah, there was some of the guys that would though.
Last
They'd be
time I
fat.
went was in Panama City, and it was just fun also seeing the catch.
Mhm.
Big fat fish, things I've never really seen up close and personal. It was just
Oh, yeah.
interesting. And you can also purchase it and pretend like you actually caught it on the deep sea trip. So that was
That's a
fun.
good point. Has anybody ever went on that Captains for Kids? It's a Facebook page, but they offer what is it? Voyages or I guess or well, anyways, activities for you to do at the beach on a certain day in September. Has anybody ever done that? It
I
was really
haven't.
fun. Okay. Well, it was really fun and everything. It was the excursions are free, but you have to find somewhere to stay. And they have several of them around. I know they have one in like Orange Beach. We went to Destin and they had some in other places. You just pick where you want to go and then you sign up for what excursions you want to do. I think they only give you 2 though. When we went, we had a very unique family story. That where we all were in the water and could not get back on the boat.
Hey,
That's
Daryl's going
not
to
good.
introduce our next speaker in just a minute.
Okay, all right. I thank Kevin for being a part this morning. Thank you all for the great conversation that you all have in the networking and the unity among the group. We're going to move on. We do have a special presenter coming up that I can vouch to her dedication and her hard work, commitment to the community. So I want to thank her for joining us today, taking time out of her busy schedule to be with us today. So I'm going to share a little bit about Dr. Brooks, and then as once she begins, she could take it in the direction that she would want to go. But Dr. Brooks has an extensive background from K through 12 education and organizational leadership. She has served as a leader in a large Florida school district with over 70,000 students, and also in 2 rural Alabama school districts with less than 3,000 students, which gives her a wide range of distinct experiences. Dr. Brooks is a recipient of numerous honors, to include being named the Teacher of the Year for John F. Kennedy Middle School. She's been recognized by the United Women's League, the Tuskegee-Macon County Chapter NAACP, Tuskegee University Bioethics Center, as well as Omega Psi Incorporated for outstanding services, and was named one of Macon County's top women of influence by the Southeast Small Business Magazine. Dr. Brooks is deeply humbled to have been appointed to 2 state boards by a former Alabama governor, the Alabama State Board of Trustees, and the State of Alabama Department of Archives and History. She served in the role of the Superintendent for Education for Macon County School System for more than a decade. And recently, she has retired as of January of this year. She holds memberships in many educational organizations. She has authored and or contributed to a number of grants, including a multi-million-dollar Alabama Gear Up grant to reduce dropouts in the Black Belt communities, a multi-million-dollar Apple Connect Ed grant that put professional learning, instructional technology stations, infrastructure upgrades, MacBooks, and iPads in the hands of students of Macon County and the staff. And most recently, a Federal Aviation Agency grant to start the aviation mechanics training program in the Macon County school system. She's been married to her high school sweetheart, Terry Brooks, for 32 years, and they have 2 children who are being educated in the Macon County schools. As you see, Dr. Brooks is a proven career educational leader. She has expanded her work into her own company, Your Empowerment Service, where community improvement is her focus. So I introduce to you Dr. Jacqueline Brooks. You can have the floor.
Well, thank you so very much, and good morning to everyone. It is certainly a pleasure to be here this Saturday morning. And I hope that I share something with you that will make the lives of all of our children here in Alabama better and safer, which is all of our missions, regardless of the agency we represent today. I'm always intrigued and happy when I see collaborations formed. And so I know that today it epitomizes what collaboration is all about. And so that's our main thing. I'll be sharing my screen with you, and I will come from the perspective of a superintendent who has gone through 3 school terms of COVID-19 and its impacts. And I guess I would say, before I start my presentation, regarding children who come to us with disadvantages, whether they be congenital birth defects, whether they be specific learning disabilities, whether they're onset handicaps and disabilities from accidents or trauma, mental health issues, or just being disenfranchised as a minority or underrepresented population in education. The word that has really stuck with me through this pandemic and through my last 3 years as superintendent has been exacerbated. Every condition that we see, everything that we have always dealt with and that has always been an issue for our children with disabilities and underrepresentation was simply exacerbated. An exponent was put on it. It was multiplied as a problem and to provide solutions. Here's my comment. Take a look and see how we can rectify these exacerbated conditions that have occurred. And so I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you, and please pardon me if something goes out, because a little pop-up message just said your internet connection is unstable. So I'm not sure why, but it's probably Murphy's Law as usual. Okay. All right, let's see if I have my controls. Okay, there we are. Thank you all so much. Now make sure everybody can see. If someone will just give me a thumbs up or a nod to say that you can see the screen. It's green and black and a lot of strange colors. All right, wonderful. Well, of course, thank you to Partners in Policy Making for inviting me. As I said, I'm going to share from my superintendent's hat some strategies to support cognitive and affective recovery for all students. Many of our legislators and policymakers are simply focused on that cognitive recovery piece. And I don't even have a slide on this, but it just behooves me to say that if most of us go back to our psychological training or psychology training, be it ed psychology or psych or whatever the class may have been, you know that one of the things we studied was Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so, of course, with that, there are foundational needs that must be met for our students before we can even get into the mathematics, the science, the English, and those kinds of things. So hence, I say we have to support the cognitive and the affective recovery for all students. Are they fed? Do they have nutrition? Do they have a safe place to stay? Are there lights on? All of those kinds of things are part of our conversation. When I was thinking about COVID, and I was thinking about where we are with our students in terms of learning and their effectiveness, their affective support, I kind of thought about the Clint Eastwood movie. We've got a little bit of the ugly, kind of simultaneously, but I did a flip of the script, and I want to start today kind of with the bad and go to the good, and then talk about some potentials of the ugly in this whole conversation. And so, of course, we all know what the bad is. We're still dealing with some of it. We got a red light, we got a halt on everything, and we refer to it as the coronavirus or corona or the pandemic or whatever we're referring to the term by. March 16th of 2020 stopped education in its tracks. Never before in our modern times have we had anything to bring all of education all across the United States and all across the world to a halt. And that's why I term what we have gone through and what we're going through with the pandemic, the bad. And so when you think about this, people will say, oh, our kids are a year behind. Well, when we come to our students with disabilities, many of them were already 2 or more years behind. So we have to really put this in context that if a regular ed student or many of our students who may be advantaged students or gifted students are a year behind, where does that leave our disability students? Where does that leave our students who are already disenfranchised? Some of them now may be 3, 5 or more years behind. If they have not gotten to school yet and they were kindergarten age or first grade age, that is a huge deficit. So when I say this is the bad, that is really a bad situation. And so if we look at March 2020 and we look at today's date, we're only a few weeks out from March of 2022. So we have actually been in this bad situation for 3 school terms, 3 school terms. Usually if we have a traumatic situation, it's a situation that happens, it affects 1 school term, we move on and we kind of come out of that. But really, we are still in this situation when we're still having shutdowns, we're still fluctuating between mask and no mask, we're still doing contact tracing. So that has been 3 school terms. That was 1920, 2021, and now 21-22. And we pray fervently that we do not go into a 4th school term with many of the things that we have experienced in these other 3. So that is the bad. We know that schooling provides essential learning. We know that school is the place where we give mental health supports and we meet some basic needs. So when schools close or are significantly impacted, children and youth are deprived. And if we're going to highlight a word in this particular slide, it would be deprived. That means our students are missing critical things, critical constructs that they would normally get in a school setting. And so their growth is affected, their development is affected, and both cognitively and affectively. We know that these disadvantages are disproportionate, meaning they are magnified for disabled and underprivileged learners who tend to have fewer educational opportunities beyond the school wall. That school wall gives them supports. So I've seen this slide many times and you've probably seen it as well. It's the equity versus the equality slide. But I like to use the one with the 3 settings in it and not the 2, because most of the time we see equality versus equity. So we need to make sure that our kids are getting equity. But when we really look at what's normally done with equity, it is that horror movie, that's that 3rd setting there. We usually cut everybody's legs off to make them have the equity they need, rather than giving everyone, as in the 2nd setting, the supports that they need so that that equity is real. So oftentimes we say equity in theory, but when it comes to reality, we don't have that equity in place. So that also kind of goes with that bad. Are we really providing the equity in reality for our students with disabilities and our students who are disadvantaged? And that's a rhetorical question, one I just want you to think about. Are we really doing that? Let's move into the good a little bit, because I do want to talk about this pandemic, as bad as it is, having some good in it. And what do I mean that it has good in it? It took a pandemic, folks, for the purse strings to open. That in itself is bad, but the purse strings are open. And that is very good in a way, because the American Recovery Act has given almost every aspect of government, states, counties, cities and towns, school systems, and other agencies funds, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, and there are some other names depending on how they're classified. With other COVID relief measures, you know, it's just kind of raining down. It's almost like, wait, hold on, we got so much money. How do we spend it? How do we commingle it? How do we use it for good? And of course, this money should be and must be used to impact cognitive and effective recovery in meaningful ways. And if we're dealing with equity in reality, then we're going to make sure that with these funds, our students who are students with disabilities, handicaps, other needs, disadvantaged students, we're going to make sure that this money is used in meaningful and innovative ways, because this is an unprecedented time for funding. And so if we're ever going to close the achievement gap, positively impact cognitive and effective recovery, the time is now. It certainly is now. And so I want to just share with you again from my educational hat and from my former superintendent seat, some of the things that those COVID relief funds are able to help us do to achieve equity for our students with disabilities and other disenfranchised students. So let me share some of those things. First of all, nutritional support for students. We have talked about childhood hunger for years. And during the pandemic, we had a lot of agencies, school systems, federal and state government to step up and make sure that we had meals in the hands of all of our students. And so just sharing with this, that this is a process that we can refine even more. Practices that should be on our list of continuous practices: meal delivery to students' homes on virtual days or summer days or whatever days they might need meals. Pick up and curbside service for parents to pull up to the school and have meals put into their car windows, just like they're at the McDonald's, without having to worry about the cost of the meals, so that the students can have a good meal every day. Ensuring that on Thanksgiving and Christmas and spring break and other long breaks when children are away from school, that they have boxes of food that will go home with them so that they do not experience hunger during those lapses of time that they are away from school. In our school system, we became a community eligibility program. And I know there are others in the state, but not all of our school systems that are eligible to be community eligibility program participants have done that. And so as we look at what we can do to make sure our students have their nutritional needs met, we encourage all systems, all agencies to look for feeding program opportunities that they can offer. Because we were a community eligibility program, and it's referred to as a CEP program, then our students in Macon County, every student, regardless of income, eats at no cost. So it doesn't matter if you're in the upper income bracket, the middle income bracket, or the lower income bracket. If you are in one of our schools in Macon County, because we are CEP, community eligible, then every child in that school eats at no cost. That also entitled them during the American Recovery Relief Act to be eligible to receive a PEBT card. And the P stands for pandemic. It was a pandemic EBT card for families to use so that we could make sure we did not have any childhood hunger in the homes. As I said, any agency that meets the USDA criteria can apply to do after-school feeding as well. And so in our community, Tuskegee University has an after-school feeding grant. And through a collaborative with Tuskegee University, the food is prepared at the university and it is satellited to our schools for our after-school programs. And it is delicious food and well prepared. So nutritional supports for our students, particularly our students who are disabled and disenfranchised, is key, and that effective support and recovery. We also use these funds to make sure that we had supplies for every kid, whether it was a scientific calculator, a protractor, a book bag, a scientific notebook, whatever it is that they needed, we provided that for them, which was also a help to parents. We used our state representative's initiative that she's always done, which was called the Back to School Bash. But this time we merged it with our COVID relief efforts, and we packed all of the book bags, grades pre-K through 12, with the supplies that were aligned with that particular grade, and delivered them to the schools. And when we had registration, then we passed those out to the parents and made home visits where were necessary. And of course, we know kids need to be restocked. So at the second semester in January, the new superintendent made sure that the students were restocked with their supplies for the second semester. Clothing closets. Many times we have students who need a change of clothes. They may have an accident. They may need clothes because for some reason there's a hardship with clothing. They may rip their clothes at school. Whatever that reason may be, we now have stocked clothing closets at each school. And this is something that is a support for students and of course for parents. Additional counselors. When we talk about the need, the affective needs and the cognitive needs of students, a school counselor is so important. And if you know how school counselors are funded in Alabama, we're funded on an old matrix that's called the SACS accreditation method. So if you have an elementary school that has less than 400 students, you really earn a half counselor. You earn a half person. But the needs of the students are not half by any means, particularly if you have students with disabilities and students who have other disenfranchisements. And so a full-time counselor is needed at every school, and some schools need 2 or 3. And so, of course, we were able to bring in additional counselors at our school. And we were very happy that we could get our mental health counseling coordinator and mental health program off the ground. Because frankly, everyone in the school district, including me as superintendent, had exacerbated mental health needs during the pandemic. And so we were all doing the best we can, but we were all struggling. And those of us who were in leadership had to put on a very good face. So having that mental health counselor to be able to assist with the needs of the students and the families was just a godsend for us to have. And we're hoping that as we look at policy and we look at legislation in the State Department and in the State House, we can work to keep mental health counseling at the forefront of our funding needs in our schools and school systems. We were also able to bring in some other social, emotional, and mental health programs. Rhythm is one in New County schools, and I saw someone tweet out last night, I believe it was Bruton City Schools, that they are implementing the Rhythm program. So that's one that you can write down and further look at as a mental health support. We started the Peer Helpers program in each of our schools. I have some students who had the supports necessary and the success that was needed to be able to influence and help other students get on a path of success as well. We use 7 mindsets, which are kind of like 7 habits, but rather than being habits, they're actual mindsets of keeping your mind focused and positive. So we use that as an emotional learning mechanism for our students. And of course, our counselors, being that we had additional ones and our mental health counselors, we were able to re-implement our goal setting for each student. What are your goals for the year? What do we need to help you do? What is your long-term goal? And that's very important for students with disabilities, because we have to help them have benchmarks, short-term and long-term, for accomplishment. We were able to hire additional regular education teachers, special education teachers, and elective teachers. And so increased staffing was a big deal to us. Again, in the state of Alabama, we are funded by a foundation program, which gives you a basic foundation. It means it gives you a slab, a cement slab. There are no walls, there's no roof, there's no windows, no insulation, no granite, any of that, just the foundation program. So when we look at how many teachers we have in a foundation program, they are enough for every child to have a homeroom, but not enough for every child to have the extra supports that he or she needs. So in that foundation allocation, we have to pull out special ed teachers. We have to pull out career tech teachers. We have to pull out vocation teachers. But this allowed us to add those teachers as an enhancement. Also curriculum specialists and school improvement specialists to help meet those specific needs of all of our children. One of the supports that has been particularly wonderful for us is being able to have an extended learning year. The state of Alabama has 180 days typically for us to use in a student's calendar. And so if we want to do more than that, of course, we have to have funding to pay for that. So one of the things we did was a year from 180 days to 190 days. And we took our teacher days up to 198 days, and it's normally 187. And we saw such a positive impact because we do have students who were behind, students who struggled with virtual learning, and to be able to have them on site for these additional days gave them additional time for learning and for supports. Our one-to-one initiative, of course, you heard in the introduction that we received a big ConnectEd grant back in 2015, and some of it was re-upped in 2019 from Tim Cook and Apple. But you know, devices are fragile. Devices crack, they break, and they get lost. And so we were able to use some of our COVID recovery funds to repair, refurbish, and replace and get additional devices, because the devices are consumable in so many words, especially when they are mobile like an iPad. And so every student in Macon County received new devices again. And let me tell you what I like about the iPad. The iPad has so many assistive technologies built in. And until I went through the Apple ConnectEd grant, I had no idea. Even for our students with visual impairments, there's a whole color coding scheme of attributes that can be turned on in the iPad to assist those students. There are so many apps now that allow us to do assistive technology without having a separate device. So having this technology and support is absolutely critical and key for our students with disabilities. I particularly like the device where the students can program it. We have a little restaurant program we run out of one of our classes for our special needs students. And so we have a nonverbal student, but he welcomes everyone to the Eagle Cafe because he programs his iPad to say, welcome to the Eagle Cafe when you walk in. And so having that technology is absolutely wonderful at the fingertips of our students. 24/7 access. One of the things that we are very happy about is that we could buy extra and additional licensure for many types of support programs that parents could access 24/7. Students could get to them 24/7 as a learning support. And so kind of the Khan Academy concept that there is some type of learning system available to every child, every student, no matter their level, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Online tutoring. was something that we also rolled out, and we partnered with really 4 agencies in the district. One is called Next Step or Next Step Up. And one of our high school students who is a graduate student working now founded this company and came back into the community, Elise Talbert, and started a tutoring program where she works with our students. I am my brother's keeper. And of course, the National Sorority of Phi Delta Kappa and retired teachers all have programs that they offer to work with students. And these are students one-on-one or students in groups or by schools, depending on what the needs are. Summer learning programs. In the past, most of our summer programs were around 21st century and trying to get other grants that were competitive. And so some schools had grants and some didn't. And this particular funding allowed us to provide high quality summer programs at every school using the same concepts and constructs that we use for our 21st century community learning centers. So we now have that design in every school. We started last year, June 16th, and ran through June 22nd. And so we've used that money now to forecast and succession plan these programs out for the next 3 summers. So we're happy that our students will have that support. After school programs, of course, same thing. We have 165 days of the year. We plan it out on our calendar of after school programming for the academic year. And again, we use the 21st century community learning center concept to run those after school programs. And we run them based on student needs. We have some self-contained programs. We have some inclusion programs. We have some tier 2 programs, tier 3 programs, acceleration programs. We're trying to meet the students wherever those needs may be. We also do Saturday and weekend academies. These are now on site. During some days of the pandemic, when it was at critical points, they were virtual, but they are now on site. And so the weekend gives you 2 additional days for potential learning and support. And so we are now tapping into those. And I'll tell you, I think the parents are happier than the kids because they can drop them off on a Saturday morning. Kids get breakfast, kids engage in both cognitive and affective activities. This past Saturday, they did archery in schools that had grades 4 through 8. So it was like a club activity. And they also get lunch before being picked up at 1 o'clock. So it's a good Saturday for most parents. High dosage tutoring. Now this is different. High dosage tutoring means that we have some students whose needs are so critical. And some of them are students with disabilities, and some of them are students who have not qualified as a student with disability, but the need may be the same. And these students actually have to have a one-on-one tutor hired. And never before have the resources been so wonderful that we could absolutely do that. And so now resources allow for, if there are parents who have students with critical needs, this is the time to advocate for what you need. And that includes one-on-one tutoring, the original, the authentic, personalized learning. Learning stations around the school. Of course, some of this funding allows for construction projects. It allows for retrofitting projects. And so being able to have internet cafes, individualized learning spaces, outdoor learning spaces, taking empty nooks in the hall and retrofitting them as learning access spaces or social spaces, this is a time that that can be done. Of course, additional computer labs in the school. We were able to order $1 million worth of desk mats for our students, and those have been instrumental in students being able to be ready for the assessments that they have to take, participating in formative instruction, and accessing a plethora of resources like Alabama Virtual Library, Open Book Library, and other things. Parent and family learning, one of the things is really taking our technology to another level. And just like we're having this conference today, which is a professional conference, I was very happy to do parent conferences. So at least 1 to 2 Wednesdays a week, I had a wonderful Wednesday parent webinar and retreat. And sometimes we would get 1,000. We had 4,000 views or participants with that. And with a regular parent meeting where you had the parents come to school for parent night or math night, 25, is a good night. At the most, we've got maybe a couple hundred at the district open house. But to look down and see that you had a 1K for parents who participated, and you've got comments and you've got questions and it's interactive, has just been absolutely wonderful. They ranged anywhere from 60 minutes to 2 hours. Of course, the one we did with our local doctor, Dr. Dina Stafford, let the parents off. That was at the height of the pandemic. They had so many questions, things that they wanted to know, what they should be doing, and it was absolutely just wonderful. And so that is a continuous tool that we'll continue to use. Students with disabilities, students with enhancements, all types of students have had parent conferences now on Zoom and using technology. It's just been an absolute wonderful thing to delve into. We also broadcasted learning via TV media. We contacted WSFA and found out how to get into the mainstream of the media. And we were able to get a spot, and we ran it for 8 weeks at a time on WSFA, and it reached so many parents to tell them how to access things, how to do things, what to follow, where the learning tools were. And so I hope that this will continue. I know Mobile County Schools actually work with their public television channel, and they have a channel where students can go on and do their high frequency words and word walls and learning lessons. And so this is an untapped source. This is an untapped source. We can all do our own Reading Rainbow shows now. And so when we have students who need those extra kinds of things, we can design what they need and offer it to them and put it out there. One thing that I really love and I think is such a great program or programs that we can use in our states and communities and agencies are home visitation programs. One of the things I found is that all of the people won't come to you. In fact, maybe only half of the people or a quarter of the people will come to you, but they are receptive when you go to them. If you go to them with a smile and positivity, they are receptive. And you go in non-judgmental, you go in that I am here to help, and let me show you what to do. So when we were virtual, we had parents who had the technology in their hands, but they would call and say, I've got it, but it won't connect. What am I doing wrong? This won't happen. Or they would say, I'm trying to help her with this, but I can't do it. Folks, we have to go into the homes, and we need to be able to do more of that, more effectively, more consistently, because it is a capacity building and a major support mechanism for our students and our families. Our program here in Macon County is called HIPPY, and our formal program, and it's home instruction for parents of preschool youngsters. That's our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, where the parent is taught to be the child's first teacher, the home library is built, and those kinds of things. But we took that same concept and took it to our own Macon County visitation program, where it's, if you call, we're going to haul over there and help you get out of the rut that you're in, or help you and assist you get to a place of success. We also did a lot of videos that we recorded, and we put those in a repository, and basically our repository was our YouTube channel, where you could go in then and just pull those up and go back and watch and see lessons and those kinds of things. We had extended library hours, and so the library is a key partner in extended learning. It is critical to have partners for after school hours, weekend hours, and mobile services. And so we work with our local library on that. All right, mobile learning labs. We are so excited. We're working with our Children's Policy Council here, and we are working with our district judge, Judge Biggers. And we have taken 3 school buses. This is not actually a picture of our school bus. This is just clip art, but we actually have 3 school buses that we've taken. We've had them painted. We have one that's lavender, one that's pastel blue, and one that's green. And they're going out into the 3 communities. Because they were surplus buses, they already had the Wi-Fi on them from the COVID relief funds we spent, and we're excited about that. To universities, architecture program and construction management program are working. One did the design and the other will actually do the building. Google Classroom is a wonderful construct, especially for students with disabilities who are disenfranchised, who may have an illness, who may be hospitalized, who may have to miss some time out of class. The teacher can stay in contact with the student. They can have face-to-face interaction. And this helps with chronic absenteeism, and it mitigates learning loss. It is an absolutely wonderful construct, and one we probably would not have embarked upon had the pandemic not occurred. Of course, I mentioned wired buses, and so I'll just tell you a little bit about this. Each of our housing projects had a number of students who had concerns about connectivity. And so what we decided to do was to take our wired bus and park one at each housing complex and essentially cause each housing complex to have internet connectivity and accessibility. So those buses are surplus buses, and it's 8 of them, and they stay at the housing complexes at all times. Parents cannot get to Netflix and some other things using them because of the technological constraints and meeting the SIPA requirements, but those complexes do have internet access thanks to the Wi-Fi on the buses. We also did MiFis for the homes. And so we put the buses in the apartment complexes, but for the homes, because in some parts of rural Macon County, homes may be 2 miles or 6 miles or whatever apart. So for those areas, we did MiFis for homes without internet. Mind you, this was not a perfect solution because we do have some bricked areas in Macon County where it doesn't matter what you put out there, there is little to no connectivity. Again, this was our tech support and Wonderful Wednesdays. So we have a tech support help desk, a number, and a technical assistance form that parents can call and get resources, contact, and help for any issue that they need. In fact, we had al.com came to see us helping students. This was a Wonderful Wednesday where I was helping a student on his laptop get into his Google Classroom. And so there's a news article on al.com from August 23rd, 2020. And this was early in the pandemic. We started more clubs, photography club, book clubs, theater clubs to get all of our students involved, because typically your advantageous students were on the football team, in the band, they were cheering, they were doing all those kinds of things. But if we want engagement and we want resiliency, we have to get all of our students involved. So we were able to get sponsors for clubs that we traditionally had not had in our school district. We also expanded intramurals. So rather than just the competitive sports team, we also had intramural teams where we could get a lot of students and the whole child is developed. For some of those kids, we had one with head trauma. He had to have a specialized helmet, but we were able to work with his doctor and his physician and get those kinds of things implemented. So those are some of the good things that we were able to do. And I hope some of those things will give you some insight into what you may be able to use some of your American Recovery funding to do, or some of the things you may be able to partner with your school systems to do, or you may have some ideas that you want to take to the school system that can be done through the use of these funds. Of course, I am truly excited about those good things, but there is an ugly, guys. And the ugly is, how will we sustain all of these great things we put in place? What kind of succession plan do we have from the federal and the state level to keep our progression going forward? There is a real teacher shortage. How do we deal with staff and employee shortage? Will we deal with fatigue? Is that a threat to what we're doing? What policies do we need to implement? And that's at the local, state, and federal level. How do we keep students healthy and attending these opportunities? And how do we ensure all partners are braiding funds and working together? Because the ugly is that these funds will disappear and we will go back to possibly the funding streams and mechanisms we had. And so how do we keep going forward from there? All right, I'm Jacqueline Brooks, and I always go by Jackie. And so I put Jacqueline up there for formal purposes, but most people call me Jackie. I'm the owning member of Your Empowerment Solutions. I also serve as the executive coaching coordinator for School Superintendents of Alabama. And I am a happily retired Macon County School Superintendent. If you need to contact me, this is my cell, 334-339-0512. And my email is tnjbrooks@gmail.com. And if there's time for questions, I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. I do know that we have a few questions in the chat, and I think we got one hand raised. So we're gonna go ahead and get the hand raised. Ms. Kim's question first, then we'll move to the chat. All right, Ms. Kim, you can ask your question.
Hey, this is Kim Spangler. I put my question in the chat. Do you want me to read it?
Okay, let's see. I have a question, staffing. I'm curious about teachers being hired for students with IDD. Typically, we see schools hiring with special ed degrees until recently with a degree. Okay. Yes, I will tell you that when I had to send my report in to the most critical needs area in terms of personnel in our school district, it is just what you described. Typically, most of the teachers that we but we can't even get teachers. It is a real struggle. So we do creative things. First, that's a subgroup.
You're freezing up, Dr. Brooks. Dr. Brooks, you there?
Move.
I think because the internet connection is acting up. Probably need like more diagnostic.
I think Dr. Brooks may have had some internet issues, so she may log back in because I think she just disappeared. So we'll give her a minute or two. See if she can. Yes. Dr. Brooks, you good?
Hello, am I back?
Okay, yes, you're back.
Yes.
Hello, am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
All right, thank you. Yes, I guess that was that instability that I mentioned earlier that popped up. But anyway, we have a teacher, Mr. Melvin Thompson. He is trained in animal therapeutics with students. And so he is not a traditional special ed teacher, but I have never seen a more successful person with students with disabilities. And so he has an elementary certification. And so legally, I cannot code him as the special ed teacher. So I have all of the students that will benefit from what he does under the name of the special ed teacher, and she's their homeroom teacher. She's with them most of the day, but he services those students because he's able to move students from nonverbal to verbal success using his animal therapy. And so that doesn't necessarily fit with what the State Department says to do in terms of our students with special needs, but we have to go to what works with our students. And I know that the animal therapeutics, the use of the animals that he brings in, how the students care for them, has been successful in Macon County schools. So we recruited him from another system just to do that. But special ed staffing is an issue, but I will tell you that the state superintendent has issued a new memo. I don't know if everybody's seen it, where you can now hire a person with a bachelor's degree and have them go back and do the 5 modules. at selected universities and then obtain their certification. So I am so excited about that. It's just that we cannot use the word emergency. We have to use the word temporary. So whatever the word is, the semantics, we're okay with that as long as we get what we need for our students. All right. I hope that answered your question, Kim.
All right, and I think we got a couple more, and I'm thinking Dr. McCauley may have answered some, but how do we go about accessing the Rainbow Reading type television learning platform? And I think Sonia may have echoed that. And I think Dr. McCauley indicated it can be accessed through PBS Learning Media. So is that correct with you all?
PBS Learning Media, Alabama Public Television. Those are two resources. And then also similar to what we did in Macon County, we created our own. We created our own YouTube channel. We had our own reading coaches doing high frequency word lessons and other types of lessons. And of course, those could be accessed 24/7, which is kind of that Khan Academy learning concept, 365, 24/7. So if you found out that a student needed extra help, you could say to the parent, to access this particular link, or you could bring the child into the library to work with the librarian or to work with a tier 2 teacher, but you have several mechanisms. So again, the PBS Learning Media, Alabama Public Television, and then any local media that you can create and do in-house, because you then create a local repository that your teachers and your parents and your students can continue to use.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think Eric posed a question, and I think Dr. McCauley answered that as well. And we have another one about what is his name? I'd like to learn more about this. I guess that's the individual that you indicated earlier, Dr. Brooks, in regards to learning, teaching our kids with special needs.
Okay, Melvin Thompson.
Okay.
And he is at Tuskegee Public School.
Okay. All right. And YouTube channel.
Okay. On television, you streaming app. Okay, we use Apple TVs. We use Apple TVs with our teachers, and of course, then with our parents, because they have the cellular devices at home. They simply utilize their cellular devices or their MiFi or the parked bus for connectivity, and then they log on to or use the link to go to our YouTube channel. When I do webinars, I send out the link on the Macon County's Facebook page and through our school cast communication tool of the link, and they use that link to access. But we're an Apple connected district, so we don't use any Rokus.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. And I'm not, Veronica, is your hand still up, or you have another question?
Yes, I wanted to share something with is it Dr. Brooks or Miss
Jackie?
Jackie, I'm Veronica. I'm in Birmingham, Shelby County, and I am a parent of a son who's 22 and is an AAC user and not a privileged communicator. And so I'm very interested in this gentleman. It's so exciting. But I wanted to share a resource with you. A lot of the folks on this call have heard me really try to advocate for an organization that myself and another amazing advocate started, which is called TASH. I would love to invite you to, it's called we have a Facebook page called Alabama TASH. So TASH is a national advocacy organization based out of Washington, DC. And we are fortunate in that Alabama was voted in as a chapter about 4 years ago. I, as a parent, have been struggling to raise membership for this organization, but you definitely fit the exact perfect leader for a TASH leader. And one of their most successful platforms is special education and their advocacy on a national basis. I have personally gone to many of their conferences along with my son Kyle, who has presented at their national conferences, and the teachers in the school systems that attend this conference, it really changes their whole world, especially, just the access to resources and networking and hiring other teachers. It's a big platform for principals and superintendents to access teachers coming out of the system. But I would love to talk to you offline a little bit more about that. For self-advocates, the membership is very minimal. But I actually wrote it into my son's IEP that his special ed teacher be allowed to go to the conference because it was based in Atlanta, and they did allow some funds for that. And they also had his program specialist come also. And it really it's just was a life changer for their ability to connect to resources and other people that have the same values and core values of what the whole country is trying to do right now. So I just wanted to share that with you. So if you go to tash.org, you're
I am on it right now.
Yes. And I'm so excited. The next time we have a little get together, I'll make sure to include you virtually, and maybe we can chat a little bit more.
Oh, please do. I'm on tash.org, helping advance inclusive communities. And I see that there's a COVID-19 response and resources there as well. So I can already tell it's chock full of wonderful resources. So thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you offline.
Okay. Thank you, Jacqueline or Jackie.
Right. Thank you, Veronica. And I think Lisa has her hand up. Lisa.
There. Hi, it was so wonderful speaking to you. How did you get all of this approved and everyone on board to follow through with things?
Well, getting it approved was a big fight because at the time our State Department frankly had a lot of trepidation about what you could and could not do with these federal funds. But one of my hats that I wore prior to becoming a superintendent is that for 10 years, I was federal programs director. So I was very familiar with the EDGAR rules and regulations and what you could and could not do. And I read and I saw, and in fact, since that time, the State Department has now embraced and the rules and the business rules are a lot clearer. And there's so much you can do. Even construction, if there are specific bathrooms with constraints and they provide a barrier for success with COVID mitigation, then maybe you need to build a different bathroom that has accessibility features to it. I mean, there are just all kinds of things you can do, and it's all in the wording. It's all in the descriptors of how it's written, but everything in these buckets of money. And folks, let me tell you, usually in Macon County for federal programs, we get $1.2 million, and 90% of that is used for additional staffing, trying to get an extra math teacher, trying to get a reading coach, just trying to enhance the foundation. But when you get 3 different pots of money that exceed that, it is like you have won the lottery, but with a lot of strings. And so you have to take time to speak to your community and your constituents. We had so many Zoom webinars. I sent out so many Survey Monkeys. I did system-wide faculty meetings. So I had 300 people on a Zoom just like this webinar with the faculty members, doodle polls, all kinds of things, getting feedback about what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go with this. And so once you have your needs assessment done, you have your critical partners in place, you write your descriptors to show that you're using these funds to mitigate COVID, then you can do a number of things. At Notasulga High School, we have a gymnasium that is like a sardine can. And we really couldn't do anything there when it was COVID as far as meeting the capacity requirements. And so one of the things we wrote into our COVID application was that we needed to expand the gym. And we read all the business rules. There was nothing that prohibited us from doing that. We had to, again, we had to fight with the State Department, but we were able to get that approved. And so you have to be an advocate, and you have to be persistent, and you have to know your business rules. And, you know, sometimes you have to use the trickle down theory. So I had some contacts at the federal level. I'd say, I'm reading this, and this is what it says I can do, but my State Department is not real sure about this. Can we all get together and make sure we're all clear on this? And so we had some of those types of tete-a-tetes that allowed us to move forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. And I think we're gonna have one more question before we finish, because I know Dr. Brooks is really busy. So I think Jenny, you have your hand up.
Well, I'll tell you before that question, we're in the playoffs today at the Garrett Coliseum. So I've got to put on my BTW basketball shirt and head out here shortly.
Well, I'll be behind you.
Awesome. I was wondering, have you heard of People First of Alabama? I wanted to share
Yes.
that resource. I'm the president of People First, and we are looking to expand and build more chapters. I just wondered by chance if you would be interested in helping.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So
Okay.
you have my contact information?
Yes, I will email
If you
you.
guys will, I already have Tash. I've already been on the site. So wonderful to have that resource. But if you'll just email me, and we can go from there.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
We thank you, Dr. Brooks, and I can truly say that I have been a part of Macon County school system for many years, both of my boys, and Dr. Brooks has done great things in Macon County, and she's not only a student person, but she is about the whole community. So I can speak for that. So all of those webinars that you've mentioned, I think I was on probably 60% of them. So
You were.
she's all about the community. So I do thank you for spending your time today with us. So we want to also, and Linda will probably stay in touch with you in regards to our graduation in May. And hopefully we will have our state superintendent, Dr. Mackey, there as well. So you are more than welcome to be invited to our graduation. It will be in Montgomery.
Thank you all so much, and everyone have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very enlightening.
All right. Linda, I don't see Holly on, but I'm gonna have to run in a few. So I do appreciate you all, for today. I think, you all have continued to get a lot of great information, great people, great contact, great network. So that's what it's all about. And thank you, Dr. Debbie, for answering some of those things, because you were right on point when you were going through answering. So we do appreciate that, and the attentiveness of everyone. So we do all appreciate that. All
This
right,
is
Linda.
sort of my wheelhouse right here.
Well, I told you you'd probably have enjoyed the speaker.
Yes, ma'am.
And I had no idea about her or what she did or anything. So, Daryl said, yeah, we need to invite her. So this was great.
Yeah.
But the fact that she had such that federal level knowledge, and so that if she approached something at the state level and they told her no, she could say no. Well, no, I have the right. She had that information at a step above, which she knew how to come with the right kind of descriptors, and so that's powerful.
Yeah, when you serve as a federal programs director, you're dealing directly with the state and the government when it comes to spending those funds, and you have to spend them correctly. And you have to be well abreast of the rules and regulations regarding how to spend them.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's being transparent, if they would just be transparent with parents and communities and let us make, help us be involved in the decisions. I think that's the difference.
And when you have like community roundtables, like Mr. Darrell was talking about, he served on several committees. A lot of that information is disseminated through that, community efforts, letting parents know what's available to them, and how a lot of schools ask for parental input about how to spend certain funds. Like every year we have to have a Title I meeting, like if we are spending, getting money because we're a poor school, we have to let the parents have a say in how those funds are spent. And we have to have that meeting every single year to do that.
Yeah, and one thing, I've had an opportunity to work with Auburn school system, Opelika school systems, and a lot of things that has Macon County has had access to. Some of those schools, Auburn and Opelika, did not have access to, or did not tap into. I'm not going to say didn't have access to, but did not tap into. So, and as you heard her say about, it didn't matter what class you were classified, upper class, middle class, your child didn't have to pay for lunch. That is a huge opportunity for parents and just people of the community. So so Macon County has done a lot of great things. So yeah. Well, people, I appreciate you all. I'm gonna see you all. Linda, anything for me before I log off, or anybody?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, I thank you all, and I will see you all next time.
That sounds good.
Thanks, Daryl.
You're welcome.
Have
You
a
have a
fun
good
ball
weekend.
game. Who are you rooting
Thanks.
for? Wait, who's playing today?
It's Booker T. Washington, and I'm not
Oh,
sure who
Booker
they're
T.
playing.
Washington. Oh, okay.
Yes, they in Montgomery.
Big game.
Yeah. So, see you all later.
Yeah, so everybody, we're gonna have a break for 30 minutes. And then got a couple videos for you to watch, and then we'll have our next speaker. So I will see you all back here about 12:30.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
See you later.